In tonight's news edition, Jordan welcomes a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and His Majesty the King urges efforts to make the truce hold. The Prime Minister asks officials to accomplish the draft state budget and independent institutions' budget drafts for their endorsements early next month. And Syrian rebels say they have captured an army base in the eastern oil region. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Jordan welcomed the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and said stopping Israel's aggression and the bloodshed in the Palestinian territory was a goal the kingdom had sought from the start of the hostilities. Minister of State for Media Affairs and Communication and official government spokesman Samih Ma'aita said continued military attacks means more instability and concern in the region. He said the primary goal of Jordan's diplomacy was to reach a truce through His Majesty the King's efforts in support of the Palestinians and their just cause. King Abdullah last night held talks with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and declared he backed all international regional issues to make the truce hold. King Abdullah and the UN chief also stressed the need for restoring the momentum to revive Palestinian-Israeli peace talks according to the two-state solution. Hala Dibabne reports on the UN chief's talks in Amman.
His Majesty the King has called for regional and international efforts to make a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel hold. The truce came into effect last night, putting a halt to the Israeli military escalation in Gaza. The King made the remarks during a meeting last night with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who was on a tour in the region. Another key focus of the talks was giving momentum to the Palestinian-Israeli peace process, with the King calling for stepped-up international efforts to put negotiations back on track based on the two-state solution. King Abdullah called for further aid to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip to help them overcome their living and economic hardships, stressing the vital role of the Jordanian military field hospital in Gaza. The UN chief commended efforts by His Majesty at the regional and international levels to ensure a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. In a news conference with Foreign Minister Nasser Joudeh, the chief welcomed the Gaza truce and said the focus now must be on ensuring it holds.
I thank His Majesty King Abdullah for his flexibility and invitation at such a short notice. I know how much is at stake for Jordan, and I can assure you that I will continue to exert all possible efforts to help Israel and the Palestinians achieve the two-state solution that both sides have committed to. I am convinced that the Palestinians should have an independent, viable and democratic state of their own, living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security. I urge again the parties who have agreed to this ceasefire agreement must keep their promise. There may be still a lot of changes, challenges and odds in the course of this, implementing this. I would urge them to exercise maximum restraint, patience, with a sense of understanding, mutual understanding. This is very important.
Jordan has also been holding contacts to end the suffering of Gazans under Israel's blockade, which was aggravated by the Israeli offensive.
I just want to add to that by saying that all of us who have been following with much concern the developments of the last or so, in His Majesty's contacts with world leaders, in his meetings, we have stressed to all concerned, and including regional leaders. His Majesty spoke to President Abbas and spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yesterday, on His Majesty's instructions, I was in Gaza with a delegation of Arab foreign ministers as part of an Arab League mission. We spoke to everybody, and our message was very, very clear. His Majesty's diplomatic effort has been that once the ceasefire is arrived at, it has to be sustainable, and that we cannot slide back into conflict or breaking the ceasefire and heightening the tensions and escalation again. We saw civilian deaths. We saw horror and destruction. And at the end of the day, this all leads us back to the larger picture, which is the need to have peace and stability and prosperity in the entire region.
The UN Secretary General was in the region, where he held talks with Palestinian leaders in the West Bank city of Ramallah and Israeli officials in West Jerusalem in a bid to bring calm to Gaza. Hala Dababne for the News at 10.
Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour has asked officials to accomplish the draft state budget and independent institutions' budget drafts for their endorsement early next month, according to constitutional amendments. During a visit to the General Budget Department, where he learned firsthand about the 2013 budget draft, Mansour urged more transparency and clarifications of all the draft figures. Finance Minister Sulaiman Al-Hafiz called the budget draft realistic and transparent, saying it took into consideration international and regional economic and political developments. He said the budget fits well into the National Fiscal Reform Program, which focuses on cutting spending, particularly current expenditures. General Budget Department Director Ismail Zaghloul said it will be a qualitative budget that adapts to development in the kingdom. A supply convoy arrived in the Gaza carrying equipment for the Jordanian military hospital in the Gaza Strip, Gaza 21. The convoy sent to Gaza upon an order by His Majesty the King to the Armed Forces Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff crossed into the coastal enclave via the northern border crossing of Beit Hanun. King Abdullah, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, had ordered the military command to urgently send the equipment for the hospital to continue its much-needed medical services to alleviate the suffering of Gazans after Israel's 8-day offensive. A ceasefire between Hamas and Israel held firm, but both sides say their fingers are still on the trigger. There were scenes of joy among the ruins of Gaza over what Palestinians hailed as a victory. Despite the quiet on the battlefield, the death toll from the conflict crept up on both sides. The body of a 25-year-old Palestinian was recovered from the rubble of a house where 9 of his relatives were killed by an Israeli bomb. That raised to 163 the number of Palestinians killed. Hamas rockets killed 6 Israelis, including 2 soldiers, one of them an officer who died today of his wounds. Zain Abu Soufe reports on the aftermath.
Across the Gaza Strip after the ceasefire announcement. Thousands took the streets last night after news broke out that the ruling Hamas movement and Israel had reached a truce deal, and celebrations continue today. Israel's 8-day offensive into the coastal enclave brought Palestinians together, with people marching side by side, carrying yellow Fatah flags and green Hamas flags in a show of unity through Gaza City. With guns, fireworks, sweets and cries of victory, Gazans poured towards Shifa Hospital to visit the wounded. Civilians who were taking shelter at UN schools in the Gaza Strip were happy to be returning to their homes. Many of the fishermen crammed into Gaza's port were in a celebratory mood, wrangling over how far curbs over crossing points into Israel and Egypt might be lifted.
It's a great joy, the joy of the victory, and we hope that they will open the sea for us. We are the sector that suffers the most because of the siege that allows us to go only 3 miles, and we are 3,000 fishermen in charge of 3,000 families.
The Egyptian brokered truce, which was backed by the United States, took effect at 9 p.m. Gaza time last night. It also opened discussions to ease Gaza's blockade. The 8-day Israeli offensive has left 162 Palestinians dead, more than half of them civilians, including 37 children and 11 women. The Israeli military said nearly 1,400 rockets were fired into Israel, killing 5 people. While the Gazan street was in celebration, Hamas said it would respect the truce if Israel did.
We are satisfied with the peace agreement that we signed yesterday. It comes as the crowning moment of victory which the resistance has achieved through the battle. We consider this a point of change in the battle against the occupier, and we are committed as long as the occupier is committed.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had agreed to exhaust this opportunity for an extended truce, but told his people a tougher approach might be required in the future. Netanyahu explained that Hamas's infrastructure was targeted and that the objectives of the operation were achieved, though he knows that there are citizens who expect an even tougher response. On the border with Gaza, thousands of Israeli reserve units packed up equipment to leave the border zone. Israel's army chief warned, even after the stand down of the reserves, the army is ready if needed.
We're totally ready, capable and willing, if need, to move on with land forces as well. If Gaza will stay quiet, if nothing comes out of that, Gaza will be a quiet place. If the terror organizations will reoperate from Gaza, the future is worse than it was.
1.7 million people in Gaza have been under Israeli blockade since Hamas forces seized control in 2007. Israel says it must maintain the blockade to prevent arms and military material reaching Hamas. Zain Abu Sufa for the News at 10.
In the occupied West Bank, Israeli troops arrested more than 50 Palestinians during raids in Ramallah, Beit Lahem, Nablus and Hebron. In occupied Jerusalem, Palestinian residents scuffled with Israeli police after a Palestinian woman was detained for allegedly trying to stab an officer. A police spokesman said the woman was arrested. At least 4 more Palestinians, including 2 women, were also detained in the nearby post office. A policeman was seen exchanging punches with a Palestinian man who hit the policeman and managed to run away. Border police were assisted by mounted officers who arrived after the scuffles broke out. France indicated it would support efforts by the Palestinians to secure a diplomatic upgrade at the United Nations. The French decision is likely to boost Palestinian efforts as they seek greater international recognition. Frustrated at their bid for full UN membership last year failed amid U.S. opposition in the UN Security Council, Palestinians have launched a watered-down bid for recognition as a non-member state. Without specifically saying which way France would vote at the UN General Assembly, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius hinted that Paris would support the Palestinians' bid. Syrian rebels celebrated as they captured a base near the Iraqi border. In Aleppo, there are grim reminders of the cost of war as people search for survivors on devastated streets. The conflict has already cost some 38,000 lives, and there is still no end in sight. Farah Ajlouni has the details.
A Syrian army artillery base in the eastern province of Deir ez-Zor falls to the rebels, weakening President Bashar al-Assad's control of the strategic region bordering Iraq. An official in the Military Revolutionary Council said 44 rebels fighters had been killed in the siege of the base. Rebels claimed the region from the border of Iraq to the city of Deir ez-Zor is in rebel hands. Soldiers were shown roaming the grounds of the army artillery base in Mayadeen after its capture. But no major city has fallen to the opposition, and Assad's air power has ensured that the rebel hold on many parts of the country remains tenuous. Meantime, attempts to bring rebels under unified command have made little headway. Sheikh Nawaf al-Bashir, a tribal leader from the province, said the fall of Mayadeen leaves Assad with 3 major army bases left under his control in the province. Elsewhere, shelling in Syria's second city of Aleppo continued. Men were searching through the rubble of a destroyed building in the aftermath strike yesterday. One bloodied body is pulled from the rubble of the collapsed building and loaded into the back of a damaged car. Heavy gunfire could also be heard from the Syrian town of Ras Al Ain near the Turkish border, where Free Syrian Army rebels are said to have heavy presence. According to opposition sources and diplomats, rebels have stormed several bases in the north and center of the country, indicating growing military strength. And as the conflict in Syria deepens, NATO is considering a Turkish request for the deployment of Patriot missiles near the border with Syria. Turkey formally made their request after weeks of talks with NATO allies about how to shore up security on its border. Russia has opposed the potential of deployment, saying militarization of the border is an alarming sign and would move the situation into a more dangerous direction. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
In southern Lebanon, the Lebanese army disabled a rocket which was primed to be fired into northern Israel. It said 2 other missiles were launched last night but fell short of the border. An army statement said the incident all took place near the southern Lebanese town of Marjayoun, about 5 kilometers from Israel's northern border. On Monday, the army dismantled 2 rockets aimed towards Israel before a truce ended Israel's 8-day war on the Gaza Strip. European leaders are meeting in Brussels in an intensive 2-day summit to try to hammer out an agreement on around €1 billion of spending over the next 7 years. European Council President Herman Van Rompuy, who will chair the summit, has taken pains to win over London and North European states furious at a proposed hike in EU spending between 2014 and 2020, at a time of austerity at home. Luxembourg Prime Minister and Eurogroup Chairman Jean-Claude Juncker said work still needed to be done to reach an accord. Leaders began with a day of one-on-one meetings with Van Rompuy. All 27 heads of state and government will tonight begin to discuss a new compromise budget package as a group. Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso will fight it out one last time this weekend at the Brazilian Grand Prix to decide who will be crowned 2012 world champion. Red Bull's Vettel is 13 points clear of Ferrari's Alonso following last week's US Grand Prix. If Spain's Alonso wins at Interlagos and Vettel finishes lower than 4th, he would win his 3rd world crown. Practice for the race is tomorrow before the qualifying on Saturday. Jack Taylor of Grinnell College stormed the US NCAA record books when the sophomore guard racked up 138 points in a game against Faith Baptist Bible College. Taylor sank an amazing 18 three-point shots in the closing 20 minutes of the game, which ended up in a 179-104 win for Grinnell. Wilt Chamberlain holds the NBA scoring records with 100 points in a game between the Philadelphia Warriors and the New York Knicks back in 1962. Over to the weather outlook. Unstable weather conditions tonight with rainfall and moderate winds changing to brisk at times. As for tomorrow, it will remain chilly and cloudy with local showers. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cloudy skies with possible scattered showers. Winds will be northerly moderate, changing to brisk at times, and the seas slightly choppy. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Jordan welcomes a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and His Majesty the King urges efforts to make the truce hold. The Prime Minister asks officials to accomplish the draft state budget and independent institutions' budget drafts for their endorsement early next month. And Syrian rebels say they have captured an army base in the eastern oil region. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lanza Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.